The movers were already loading my leather recliner when I pulled into the driveway. That chair had been my sanctuary for 8 years, positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon sun streaming through our living room windows. Now, strangers in matching blue uniforms were hauling it toward a truck like evidence from a crime scene. "What the hell is going on here?" I called out, jogging up the front steps of what I'd thought was still my house. Beth appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand, looking as composed as she did when organizing our daughter's birthday parties. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe ponytail she wore when she meant business, and she was wearing the navy dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. "Jimmy, you're early," she said, checking her watch with theatrical precision. "I thought you'd be at the Henderson job site until 5. "I got your message. You said it was urgent." I watched 2 movers navigate our dining table through the front door, the same table where we'd shared breakfast just that morning. "Beth, what's happening here?" She handed me a manila envelope, thick with legal documents. "I'm moving out. We're getting divorced." The words hit me like touching a live wire without proper safety gear. After 15 years in electrical work, I knew what shock felt like, but this was different. This was the kind that left permanent damage. "You're what?" I tore open the envelope, scanning the legal jargon. Irreconcilable differences, petition for dissolution of marriage, division of assets. The words blurred together like circuit diagrams drawn in a foreign language. "I've fallen out of love with you, Jimmy. I'm sorry, but I can't pretend anymore." Beth's voice carried that same matter-of-fact tone she used when telling the girls to clean their rooms. "I've found someone else." "Someone else?" My voice cracked like a teenager's. "Who?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that we handle this maturely, for Emma and Sophie's sake." She gestured toward the moving truck. "I'm taking what's mine, and you can keep the house." "Where are my daughters?" "They're staying with my parents until I get settled. This transition will be easier if we minimize the drama. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Drama. She was dismantling our entire life together and calling it drama, like I was some hysterical character in one of her reality shows. The movers continued their work around us, professional and efficient, as if they'd done this dance 1,000 times before. "Beth, we can work this out. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. We always have." She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "No, Jimmy. Some things can't be fixed. Some things are just broken beyond repair." One of the movers approached with a clipboard. "Ma'am, where do you want us to take everything?" Beth rattled off an address on the north side of town, in one of those new developments with names like Whispering Pines and Sunset Meadows. I'd wired houses in that neighborhood. Expensive houses. Houses that required 2 incomes or one very good one. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She sighed, the way she did when I left dishes in the sink. "A few months. I wanted to make sure everything was arranged properly." "A few months. While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep Parish Brothers Electrical afloat, while I was coaching Emma's soccer team and helping Sophie with her science projects, Beth had been planning her escape with the precision of a military operation." "I'll need you to sign some papers," she continued, pulling more documents from her purse. "Nothing major, just acknowledgement that you've been served and that you understand the temporary custody arrangement." "Temporary custody arrangement?" "The girls will stay with me. You'll have visitation rights, of course. Every other weekend, holidays to be negotiated." Every other weekend, holidays to be negotiated. She was turning my daughters into a schedule, a business arrangement to be managed and optimized. The movers finished loading the truck and drove away, taking half my life with them. Beth gathered her purse and the remaining paperwork, checking her phone with the distracted air of someone late for an appointment. "I'll be in touch through my lawyer," she said. "Try not to make this harder than it has to be." She walked to her silver Honda, the one I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago, and drove away without looking back. I stood in my driveway, surrounded by the gaps where our life used to be, holding divorce papers and wondering how I'd missed every warning sign. But Beth had made one mistake in her perfectly orchestrated exit. She'd been too efficient, too eager to disappear. The head mover had left his clipboard on the porch, and $50 convinced him to share the delivery address. 20 minutes later, I was parked across the street from 247 Maple Ridge Drive, watching my wife carry boxes into a house I'd never seen before. And there, parked in the driveway like it belonged there, was a truck I recognized immediately. Parish Brothers Electrical. John Parish, owner, truck operator. My brother's truck. The next morning hit me like a caffeine crash after a double espresso. I'd spent the night in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of furniture and the echo of my daughter's laughter. Every room felt like a museum exhibit. Here lived a family, circa last Tuesday. I drove to the Parish brothers' office early, hoping to catch John before the crew arrived. Our company occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, with offices built into what used to be the loading dock. John's truck was already in the parking lot, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the guilty expression on his face when I walked through the front door. "Jimmy, hey." He looked up from his desk, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. "You're here early. We need to talk." "Sure, but I've got the Morrison estimate to finish, and then the crew meeting at 8. "Now, John." Mary looked up from her desk in the outer office. She'd been our office manager since we started Parish Brothers 5 years ago, a sharp woman in her 50s who kept track of every invoice, every appointment, and every piece of office gossip worth knowing. "Morning, Jimmy," she said, but her usual smile was replaced by something that looked like concern. "You okay? You look like you've been wrestling with a live wire." "I'm fine, Mary. Just need a few minutes with my brother." John set down his coffee and gestured toward his office. "Come on in." I followed him into the glass-walled space that overlooked the warehouse floor. John had always been particular about his office, keeping it neat and professional with his military awards on the wall and his desk organized like a command center. Today, it felt like an interrogation room. "So what's up?" John asked, settling into his chair with forced casualness. "Beth left me yesterday." John's face arranged itself into an expression of surprise that would have been convincing if I hadn't seen him use the same look when explaining cost overruns to clients. "Oh man, Jimmy, I'm sorry. What happened?" "She said she found someone else." "Someone else? Who?" I studied my brother's face, looking for tells the way I'd learned to read electrical diagrams. John was 3 years older than me, built like the Army Ranger he used to be, with the kind of confidence that came from knowing he could handle whatever came his way. We'd started Parish Brothers together after I got out of my apprenticeship, combining his business sense with my technical skills. We were supposed to be partners. We were supposed to be family. She wouldn't say, but she had movers, John. Professional movers, all arranged in advance. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. "Women," John said, shaking his head. "They plan everything. Remember when Lisa left me? She had our whole divorce mapped out like a battle strategy." "This is different." "How so?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo I'd taken the night before, his truck in Beth's new driveway. "Because her new boyfriend drives a Parish Brothers truck." John's face went through several color changes, settling on a shade that reminded me of old copper wiring. "Jimmy, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You always could talk your way out of anything." I stood up, my hands shaking with the effort of keeping them at my sides. "How long?" "It's not what you think." "How long, John?" He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from childhood whenever he was about to confess to breaking something. 6 months, maybe 7. 7 months. While I was working late to finish the Patterson house rewiring, John was with my wife. While I was taking Emma to her piano lessons and Sophie to soccer practice, my brother was planning to steal my family. "You piece of—" I started, but John held up his hand. "Let me explain. It just happened, okay? Beth was lonely, you were always working, and we started talking. Just talking, at first. Just talking. She needed someone to listen to her, someone who understood what it was like being married to a Parish. The office felt too small, too hot, like being trapped in an electrical panel during a summer installation. Through the glass walls, I could see Mary pretending to work, while obviously straining to hear our conversation. "So you decided to comfort my wife." "It wasn't planned, Jimmy. These things just happen sometimes." "These things." I repeated his words, tasting their inadequacy. "My marriage ending is just one of those things that happens." John stood up, his military posture kicking in. "Look, I know you're upset, but Beth made her choice. She's happier with me than she ever was with you." "Is that what she told you?" "She didn't have to tell me. I could see it." The anger that had been building since yesterday finally found its target. I grabbed John's coffee mug and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered into a dozen pieces, leaving a brown stain on the white paint. "Oh, Jimmy." John stepped back, hands raised. "Calm down." "Calm down?" I kicked his chair, sending it rolling into the wall. "You stole my wife, you're breaking up my family, and you want me to calm down?" Mary appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay in here?" "Everything's fine," John said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." "No," I said, loud enough for the whole office to hear. "Everything is not fine. John here has been having an affair with my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, thanks to him." Mary's mouth fell open. Behind her I could see Joanne, our bookkeeper, frozen at her desk with a stack of invoices in her hands. "Jimmy, please," John said. let's discuss this privately." "Why? You weren't private when you were discussing my wife's underwear preferences." John's face flushed red. "That's enough." "You're right. It is enough." I pulled my keys from my pocket and threw them on his desk. "I'm out." "What do you mean, you're out?" "I mean, I'm selling you my half of Parish Brothers. Consider it a divorce gift." "You can't just—" "Watch me." I turned to Mary and Joanne, who were staring at us like we were a car accident they couldn't look away from. "Ladies, effective immediately, John Parish is the sole owner of Parish Brothers Electrical. Direct all questions, complaints, and lawsuits to him." I walked out of John's office, through the main workspace, and toward the front door. Behind me, I could hear John calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I had work to do, the kind of work that required careful planning, precise execution, and a thorough understanding of how to make things spark. Beth had always been proud of her social network. She cultivated friendships like a gardener tending prize roses, carefully nurturing relationships with the right people in the right places. Her phone buzzed constantly with invitations to book clubs, charity luncheons, and girls' nights out. She documented everything on social media, creating a carefully curated image of the perfect suburban wife and mother. That network was about to become her weakness. I spent Sunday morning in my empty house, drinking coffee and studying Beth's Facebook page like an electrical schematic. Her most recent post was from Friday evening. "Exciting changes ahead. Sometimes you have to trust your heart and take a leap of faith." New beginnings. Follow your dreams, blessed. 43 likes and 17 comments, all supportive. Her friends had no idea what exciting changes really meant. Beth's best friend Tina had commented with a string of heart emojis. Tina was an aspiring influencer who treated every social gathering like content for her Instagram stories. She had a particular talent for being in the right place when drama unfolded, and an even better talent for broadcasting it to her followers. I opened my laptop and began typing. "Hi everyone, this is Jimmy Parish using Beth's account to let you know that our housewarming party scheduled for next Saturday has been canceled. Beth has decided she needs some alone time with her new boyfriend, my brother John. Thanks for understanding, and sorry for any inconvenience. Jimmy." I posted it to Beth's Facebook page, then shared it to the Parish Brothers business page for good measure. Within minutes, the comments started pouring in. "Wait, what? Jimmy, is this a joke? Beth, call me right now. OMG, is this real?" My phone rang almost immediately. Beth's name appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. On the fourth call, I answered. "Hello, Beth." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was sharp enough to strip wire. "Saving people a trip? Nobody wants to drive across town for a party that's not happening." "You had no right to post on my account. You left your laptop open and were still married. Technically, I have every right." "Jimmy, you need to take that post down right now." "Why? Isn't honesty important in a marriage? Oh wait, I forgot. We're not doing the marriage thing anymore." I could hear John's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "This is childish," Beth said. "You're right. A mature person would have discussed their feelings before moving out and serving divorce papers. A mature person wouldn't have been sneaking around with their husband's brother for 7 months. I didn't want to hurt you." Mission accomplished. She hung up, but the damage was already spreading through her social network like electricity through a conductor. Within an hour, Tina had posted an Instagram story. "OMG, you guys, the drama is unfolding in real time. Beth Parish just called me crying. Apparently Jimmy found out about her and John, his brother, and he's going nuclear on social media. I'm heading over there now with wine and tissues. This is better than reality TV." By evening, Beth's post had been shared dozens of times, with comments ranging from supportive to scandalized to downright vicious. The suburban gossip network was humming with activity, and Beth Parish was at the center of it all. But I wasn't finished. Monday morning, I drove to John's apartment complex. He lived in one of those modern developments with names like luxury living and resort-style amenities, which mostly meant granite countertops and a pool nobody used. His truck was parked in its assigned spot, gleaming in the morning sun. I'd brought supplies. The first package was a box of Beth's old lingerie, stuff she'd left behind in her hurry to escape. I'd found it in the back of our closet, tags still attached on some pieces. I arranged it carefully on John's doorstep with a note. "Hope she fits better in your bed than she did in our marriage." The second package was more creative. I'd stopped by a fishing supply store and purchased a bottle of concentrated fish attractant, the kind ice fishermen use to draw fish to their holes. A few drops in John's truck's air intake would make every drive an aromatic adventure. The third touch was purely practical. I squeezed a generous amount of super glue into John's mailbox lock, then closed it carefully. Let him figure out how to get his bills. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Friday. Satisfaction. It was a small victory, but it was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Mary. "Jimmy, you need to see this." She'd forwarded me a screenshot from John's Facebook page. He'd posted a long, rambling message about family loyalty and personal attacks and moving forward with dignity. The comments were brutal. "Dude, you slept with your brother's wife. There's no dignity in that. This is why I don't trust contractors. Parish Brothers just lost a customer. Team Jimmy all the way." I screenshot the post and sent it to Beth with a message. "Looks like John's having trouble with his public relations. Maybe you two should work on your messaging strategy." She didn't respond, but she didn't need to. The scoreboard was starting to shift in my favor, and we were just getting started. That evening, I got a call from Carl Robertson, our former company vice president. Carl was one of those guys who saw every angle of every situation, a natural diplomat who'd helped us navigate client disputes and employee conflicts. "Jimmy, what the hell is going on? I assume you've heard?" "The whole town's heard. Beth and John?" "Really?" "Really. And you're selling your half of the company?" "Already done. John can have it all." Carl was quiet for a moment. "You know, there might be another way to handle this." "I'm listening." "John's been talking about expanding into commercial work, big contracts, city projects, the kind of work that requires bonding and insurance and a spotless reputation." "And?" "Hard to maintain a spotless reputation when you're the guy who stole his brother's wife." I smiled for the first time in days. "Carl, I think you and I need to have coffee. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., Murphy's Diner. See you there." As I hung up, I realized that Beth and John had made a fundamental miscalculation. They'd assumed that destroying my marriage would leave me powerless, that I'd crawl away and lick my wounds while they built their new life together. They'd forgotten that I was an electrician. I understood circuits and connections, how power flowed from one point to another, and how the right disruption in the right place could shut down an entire system. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Murphy's Diner occupied a corner lot on Main Street, the kind of place where contractors grabbed coffee before dawn and city workers discussed municipal politics over lunch. Carl was already waiting in a back booth when I arrived, his gray hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "You look terrible," he said as I slid into the opposite seat. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." "I'm serious, Jimmy. When's the last time you slept?" The waitress brought coffee without being asked, recognizing me as a regular. I'd been coming to Murphy's for years, usually with John, discussing job schedules and supply orders over eggs and toast. Now those conversations felt like artifacts from someone else's life. "Sleep's overrated," I said. "Tell me about these commercial contracts." Carl leaned forward, lowering his voice. "John's been courting the city for months. There's a big municipal building project coming up, and he's positioned Parish Brothers as the primary electrical contractor. We're talking about a 2-year contract worth over $500,000. That's a lot of money. It's enough to set him up for life. But here's the thing about municipal contracts. They're conservative. The city doesn't want to do business with anyone who might generate bad publicity." I sipped my coffee, thinking. And having an affair with your business partner's wife might generate bad publicity. Especially when that business partner is also your brother. Family values matter to city council members. Most of them are married with kids. "So what are you suggesting?" Carl pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. "John and Beth were at Mallory's restaurant last night. Tina posted this on her Instagram story." The picture showed John and Beth sharing dessert, looking cozy and intimate. Beth was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for Christmas, and John had his arm around her shoulders. The caption read, "Love wins, so happy for these two lovebirds. What's her true love? Such new beginnings. Soulmates. Public displays of affection," Carl observed. "They're not trying to hide anymore. Good, makes this easier." "Makes what easier?" I smiled. "Carl, do you still have connections at the Tribune?" The Tribune was our local newspaper, a weekly publication that covered city council meetings, high school sports, and the kind of community news that kept small towns informed. The editor, Mike Stevens, had been in my graduating class at Jefferson High. "I might know someone," Carl said carefully. "What did you have in mind?" "Just a little community interest story. Local business owner starts new relationship with brother's wife. Human interest angle." Carl nearly choked on his coffee. "Jimmy, that's what?" "That's nuclear." Sometimes nuclear is exactly what the situation requires. We finished breakfast in relative silence, Carl occasionally shaking his head while I planned my next moves. By the time we left Murphy's, I had a clear strategy. Step 1 was a visit to Mike Stevens. The Tribune occupied a narrow building on 2nd Street, squeezed between a hardware store and a beauty salon. Mike was at his desk when I walked in, pecking at an ancient computer with the concentration of someone trying to defuse a bomb. "Jimmy Parish," he said, looking up with surprise. "Haven't seen you since the reunion." "Hey, Mike, got a minute?" "For you? Sure. What's up?" I settled into the chair across from his desk. "I've got a story for you. Local interest, family drama, business implications." Mike leaned back, his journalist instincts kicking in. "I'm listening." "You know Parish Brothers Electrical?" "Sure. You and your brother John, right? Good reputation around town." "Well, there's been a development. John's been having an affair with my wife. She left me last week to move in with him." Mike's eyebrows shot up. "Holy cow, Jimmy. I'm sorry." "Thanks, but here's the interesting part. John's been bidding on city contracts, positioning himself as a family-friendly local business owner. Might be worth exploring how this situation affects his professional reputation." "You want me to write about your personal business?" "I want you to write about the intersection of personal and professional integrity in local business. The rest is just facts." Mike was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on his desk. "This would destroy him, you know." "He destroyed my marriage. Seems fair." "And your wife?" "She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Mike sighed. "Give me a day to think about it." "Take all the time you need. But you might want to move fast. Word is, they're planning some kind of public announcement, a party maybe, to celebrate their new relationship." That got his attention. "A party?" "That's what I heard. Nothing confirmed, but you know how these things work. Someone posts pictures, it spreads on social media, becomes a whole thing." "Yeah, I know how it works." I stood to leave. "Just thought you should know, in case you wanted to get ahead of the story." As I walked back to my truck, my phone buzzed with a text from Mary. "John's been calling all morning looking for you. Says it's urgent." I ignored the message. John could wait. My next stop was the hardware store, where I purchased several items that would come in handy later. Zip ties, a small hand drill, and a package of industrial-strength adhesive. The clerk, an older man named Pete who'd sold me supplies for years, didn't ask questions. From there, I drove to the city building where John had been courting contracts. I didn't go inside, just sat in the parking lot and made some phone calls. The first was to Tom Bradley, a city council member I'd met through the Chamber of Commerce. Tom was a straight-laced guy who took his public service seriously. "Tom, it's Jimmy Parish from Parish Brothers Electrical." "Jimmy, good to hear from you. How's business?" "Well, that's actually why I'm calling. There's been a change in our company structure. John is now the sole owner, and I wanted to make sure you heard it from me first." "Oh, everything okay?" "Let's just say we had some philosophical differences about professional conduct. I thought you should know before you finalize any contracts with Parish Brothers." "I appreciate the heads up. Can you be more specific about these philosophical differences?" "I'd rather not get into details over the phone. But if you're considering Parish Brothers for city work, you might want to do some additional due diligence." Tom was quiet for a moment. "I see. Well, thanks for calling, Jimmy. I'll keep that in mind." The second call was to Jennifer Walsh, the city's procurement officer. Jennifer was known for her thorough vetting process and her zero-tolerance policy for contractors who might embarrass the city. "Jennifer, this is Jimmy Parish. I wanted to give you a professional courtesy call about Parish Brothers Electrical." "What kind of courtesy call?" "I'm no longer associated with the company. John Parish is the sole owner now, and I thought you should update your records." "Any particular reason for the change?" "Personal reasons. But Jennifer, if you're considering Parish Brothers for any upcoming contracts, you might want to wait a week or two. There may be some publicity issues that could affect the city's reputation." "What kind of publicity issues?" "The kind that end up in the newspaper?" Jennifer sighed. "Jimmy, can you just tell me what's going on?" "John's been having an affair with my wife. She left me to move in with him. It's likely to become public knowledge soon, and I thought the city should be prepared." "Oh my God, Jimmy, I'm so sorry." "Thanks. I just wanted to make sure you had all the facts before making any decisions." "I appreciate that. And Jimmy, if you decide to start your own company, give me a call. The city values integrity." By the time I finished my calls, John had left 6 voicemails and sent a dozen text messages. The most recent text was all caps. "Jimmy, call me right now. This is important." I turned off my phone and drove home. That evening, I sat in my empty living room and waited. The house felt like a theater between performances, full of potential energy but lacking an audience. I'd set several plans in motion, and now I needed to see which ones would bear fruit first. Around 9 p.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find John standing on my porch, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past week. "We need to talk," he said. "Do we?" "Jimmy, please, let me come in." I stepped aside, and he walked into what used to be our family room. He looked around at the empty spaces where furniture used to be, the gaps on the walls where Beth had taken her pictures. "This is about the city contracts, isn't it?" he said. "Is it?" "Tom Bradley called me this afternoon. Said I should expect some complications with the municipal project." "Complications? That's an interesting word." John turned to face me, his expression desperate. "Jimmy, you can't do this. That contract is everything. It's my future." "Funny thing about futures, John. Sometimes they get disrupted by present-day choices. I know you're angry." "Angry?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "John, angry doesn't begin to cover what I am." "What do you want? Money? I can buy out your share of the company at above market value." "I don't want your money." "Then what?" I looked at my brother, this man I'd trusted with my business, my family, my life, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything." The call came at 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. John's voice was strained, almost panicked. "Jimmy, we've got a problem at the warehouse. Someone broke in, messed with the electrical panels. The whole building's compromised." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "How bad?" "Bad. The security system's down, half the lights are out, and I can't tell what else might be damaged. I need your help." "Call the police." I did. They said it looks like vandalism, but the electrical work is beyond them. "Jimmy, I know things are messed up between us, but I need someone who knows our systems." I checked the clock. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Thank you. And Jimmy? Come alone? I don't want this getting out until we know what we're dealing with." The Parish Brothers warehouse sat on 3 acres of industrial property, surrounded by chain-link fence and security lights. When I arrived, John's truck was the only vehicle in the parking lot, and most of the exterior lighting was dark. I found John inside the main building, standing near the primary electrical panel with a flashlight in his hand. The panel cover was hanging open, and several circuit breakers had been switched off. "How did they get in?" I asked. "Cut the fence on the south side. Looks like they knew exactly what they were doing." I examined the electrical panel, noting which circuits had been disabled. "This wasn't random vandalism, John. Someone targeted specific systems." "That's what I was afraid of." "Security cameras?" "Down." That was the first thing they hit. I pulled out my own flashlight and began tracing the electrical runs, looking for additional damage. The warehouse was eerily quiet, our voices echoing off the concrete walls and high ceiling. "John, I need to ask you something." "What?" "Have you made any enemies lately? Besides me, I mean." He was quiet for a moment. "Jimmy, there's something I need to tell you." "I'm listening." "The city contract. It's not just about the money. There are other people involved, other companies that wanted that work." "What kind of other people?" "Competitors. Some of them weren't happy when Parish Brothers got the inside track." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. "Are you saying this break-in is related to the city contract?" "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it's related to other things." "What other things?" John set down his flashlight and faced me. "Jimmy, I know you've been talking to people. Tom Bradley, Jennifer Walsh, others. You're trying to sabotage the city deal." "I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I'm just making sure people have accurate information." "About me and Beth. About your character, your integrity, the kind of person the city would be doing business with." John's face hardened. "So, you admit it." "I admit that I think people should know who they're dealing with." "And you don't care if it destroys everything we built together." "You destroyed it first, John. I'm just making sure everyone can see the wreckage clearly." We stared at each other across the darkened warehouse. 2 brothers who'd once been partners, now adversaries in a conflict that neither of us seemed able to stop. "The break-in," I said slowly. "There was no break-in, was there?" John's silence was answer enough. "You staged this whole thing, cut your own fence, disabled your own electrical systems, called me out here in the middle of the night." I shook my head. "Why?" "Because I need you to stop. Whatever you're planning, whatever you're doing, it has to stop." "Or what?" "Or we both lose everything. The company, our reputations, our futures. Is that what you want?" I looked around the warehouse, at the equipment and supplies we'd accumulated over 5 years of building Parish Brothers from nothing into a successful business. John was right about one thing. If this war continued, we'd both end up casualties. But some wars were worth fighting, even if victory came at a terrible cost. You want me to stop? I said. Fine, I'll stop. Relief flooded John's face. Thank you. Jimmy, I know this has been... I'll stop after Saturday. What's Saturday? You and Beth are throwing a party, aren't you? To celebrate your new relationship, to show everyone how happy you are together. John's expression shifted from relief to wariness. How did you know about that? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that Saturday night, everyone in town is going to see exactly what kind of people you and Beth really are. Jimmy, don't do this. Do what? I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to let the truth speak for itself. I headed toward the exit, leaving John standing alone in his darkened warehouse. Jimmy, wait. I turned back. What happens after Saturday? After Saturday, John, you and Beth can live happily ever after, or as happily as people like you deserve. I drove home through empty streets, past houses where normal families slept peacefully in their beds. In a few hours, those families would wake up and go about their normal lives, dealing with normal problems like mortgage payments and grocery lists and parent-teacher conferences. I envied them, but I also pitied them, because they'd never know the clarity that came from losing everything, the freedom that came from having nothing left to protect. They'd never understand the pure, clean satisfaction of perfect revenge. Saturday was 3 days away. I had work to do. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made you want to light a fire and watch football. Instead, I was parked across the street from John's apartment complex, watching guests arrive for his and Beth's coming-out party. The guest list read like a directory of our former social circle. Neighbors from our old subdivision, parents from Emma and Sophie's schools, members of Beth's book club, and several of John's military buddies. They carried bottles of wine and congratulatory smiles, ready to celebrate love conquering all. Mary sat in the passenger seat of my truck, occasionally checking her phone for updates from Joanne, who was positioned at Murphy's Diner with a clear view of the apartment complex parking lot. This feels wrong, Jimmy, Mary said for the third time. What feels wrong about it? All of it. The spying, the planning, whatever you're about to do. I'm not going to do anything illegal, Mary. I'm just going to have a conversation with some old friends. A conversation. That's all. She didn't look convinced, but she'd agreed to help after I'd explained the situation. Mary had been with Parish Brothers since the beginning, and she'd seen how hard I'd worked to build something meaningful. She'd also seen how quickly John was willing to throw it all away. At 8:30, I got out of the truck and walked toward the apartment complex. I was wearing my best suit, the charcoal gray one Beth had helped me pick out for client meetings, and I'd brought a bottle of champagne as a party gift. The door to John's apartment was propped open, and I could hear laughter and conversation spilling into the hallway. I knocked on the door frame and stepped inside. The room fell silent. Beth was standing near the kitchen, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. John was beside her, his arm around her waist in a possessive gesture that made my jaw clench. Around the room, familiar faces stared at me with expressions ranging from surprise to horror. Jimmy, Beth said, her voice carefully controlled, what are you doing here? I brought a gift, I said, holding up the champagne. Thought I should congratulate the happy couple. John stepped forward. I think you should leave. Leave? But I haven't had a chance to toast your new relationship yet. I looked around the room, making eye contact with people I'd known for years. Besides, I have some things to share with everyone. Jimmy, please, Beth said, don't do this. Don't do what? Don't share the good news about how you two found each other? I pulled out my phone and connected it to John's Bluetooth speaker system, the same system I'd helped him set up when he moved into the apartment. What are you doing? John asked. Just playing some audio I thought everyone might find interesting. The first recording was a conversation between Beth and Tina, captured during one of their phone calls earlier in the week. Beth's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The thing is, Jimmy never suspected anything. He was so busy with work, so focused on being the perfect provider, that he completely missed what was happening right under his nose. It was almost too easy. Tina's voice responded, But don't you feel bad? He seems like a good guy. Good guys finish last, Tina. John understands me in ways Jimmy never did. He's ambitious, he's exciting, he knows how to take what he wants. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. I saw Tom Bradley, the city council member, near the back of the room, his face grim. The second recording was even better. John's voice, talking to someone I didn't recognize. Jimmy's always been the technical guy, but I'm the one with vision. He's content to wire houses and fix broken circuits. I want to build an empire. With Beth beside me, I can do things Jimmy never dreamed of. What about the family business? What about it? I'll buy him out, take over completely. Parish Brothers was always my company anyway. Jimmy was just along for the ride. I stopped the playback and looked around the room. The silence was deafening. Interesting perspective, I said. Of course, there's more. The third recording was the most damaging. Beth and John planning how to handle the divorce. We need to make sure Jimmy looks unstable, Beth said. Erratic behavior, possible drinking problem, inability to handle stress. That way, when I file for full custody, the judge will see him as a risk to the girls. Are you sure about that? John's voice. Trust me, I've been documenting everything. His work schedule, his mood swings, even that time he had 3 beers at the Morrison barbecue. By the time I'm done, no judge will give him anything more than supervised visitation. The room erupted. Several people started talking at once, voices raised in shock and disgust. Tom Bradley was already heading for the door, shaking his head. Others followed. Wait, John called out. Let me explain. But there was nothing to explain. The recordings spoke for themselves, revealing Beth and John not as star-crossed lovers, but as calculating manipulators who destroyed a family for their own selfish gain. Beth grabbed my arm. Where did you get those recordings? Does it matter? They're illegal. You can't use them in court. Who said anything about court? This is just a party conversation. More guests were leaving now, their congratulatory mood replaced by disgust and embarrassment. Within minutes, the apartment was nearly empty except for Beth, John, and a handful of diehard supporters. You've destroyed everything, John said. No, I replied. I've just made sure everyone knows who you really are. Beth was crying now, her perfect makeup running in black streaks down her cheeks. You'll never see Emma and Sophie again. I'll make sure of that. Actually, Beth, I don't think you will. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Funny thing about those recordings. When I played them for my lawyer, he said they demonstrated clear evidence of parental alienation and conspiracy to commit fraud. He thinks a judge might find them very interesting, even if they can't be used as formal evidence. Her face went white. But here's the really interesting part, I continued. I also played them for Jennifer Walsh at the city procurement office. She said the city takes a very dim view of contractors who engage in fraudulent business practices. Something about integrity being a key qualification for municipal contracts. John's face crumpled. Jimmy, you can't... It's already done, John. The city pulled the Parish Brothers contract this afternoon. Seems they found a more suitable vendor. I looked around the nearly empty apartment, at the party decorations and abandoned wine glasses, at 2 people who'd thought they could destroy my life without consequences. Enjoy your new beginning, I said. Both of you. I walked out of the apartment and into the cool night air, where Mary was waiting by my truck. How did it go? She asked. It went exactly as planned. As we drove away, I could see John and Beth through their apartment window, standing in the wreckage of their celebration, finally understanding what it felt like to lose everything that mattered. The circuit was complete. The current had found its target. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again.